So hello and welcome to the first ever edition of the National League Rugby preview show powered by Talking Rugby Union, where we hope every Thursday on National League Rugby's YouTube channel we'll be able to bring you all the latest talking points in the build-up to a National 1 and National 2 weekend. And the aim with this preview show is to put our clubs further in the spotlight and encourage supporters in National League Rugby, but also rugby in general, to get a taste of and experience what the sport at levels 3 and 4 is all about, because I know we in National League Rugby are so passionate about National 1 and National 2. Of course, this is on YouTube and free to watch, but if you want to help us boost the profile of National 1 and National 2 even more, please start to like these videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share with your friends, your families, your teammates, your supporters, your members, whoever it might be. It all goes a long way to boosting the level of rugby we so much enjoy. So that's all the admin complete. As you can see, I'm joined by a guest who I hope is going to be a regular guest on the show throughout the season between September and April. It is the assistant editor of the rugby paper, who also keeps a very keen eye on National League Rugby. It's Ben Jaycock. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time out to be part of this first edition of the preview show. Are you as excited as we are for the upcoming campaign?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Chris. Really appreciate it. Yeah, incredibly excited for the new season ahead, covering it for the rugby paper as well as coming on here and speaking to you guys. Should be some really interesting battles across National 1 and National 2 this season. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, and you know, we're obviously going to go straight into those battles, storylines over the course of this show, but it would probably be rude of us not to have a little chat about last season, if that's okay, Ben, to begin with. Once again, you know, you've been following the leagues for a few years, as have I, and every single season seems to get even more dramatic. There's always something that goes down to the wire, and last year was no different in National 1 and National 2. Storylines from the first whistle in September to the last whistle in April.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think in terms of if I kind of separated them into separate highlights and between the leagues, I would say the National 1 highlight. I have to look at the newly promoted sides. I think they all went so well. Blackheath, Leicester Lions, and Sedgley Park all surviving, which is an incredible achievement, really, because that doesn't happen very often. And they all played a really good brand of rugby. And certainly Leicester Lions and Sedgley Park, they're in new territory. But I've got very good coaches, very good squads, a lot of players that have been there and seen it all at their clubs. So that was really great to see how those three clubs went. National 2 North, I think it's all about the promotion battle between Rotherham Titans and Leeds Tykes. I mean, that was just unbelievable how Rotherham kind of pipped Leeds at the post. No one saw that coming, really. Everyone kind of thought Leeds were going to run away with it, but they kept in the hunt and they eventually toppled their their arch rivals. So that was yeah really enthralling. National 2 East, there was a really good survival battle. Went down to the final day. Shame to see Wimbledon go. They're a great club, but I'm sure they'll be looking to get back up. But Worthing will be relieved. Promotion race was intriguing as well, though. Barnes, Dorking, Esher fighting it out. In the end, Esher too strong in the end, as predicted by most. They've got a really good deep squad, which is led by Peter Winterbottom as DOR. So that always helps. National 2 West highlight, I think, title race again. Dings Crusaders and Luctonians, very similar to the Nat 2 North title race, where Luctonians led the whole way, and then Dings received a favour from their arch rivals Clifton, which was bonkers to see because there's no love lost between those two clubs. And then Clifton beat Luctonians and allowed Dings to go up. So yeah, all in all, a really great season across the board.
Yeah, I think you've summarised it perfectly there, Ben. And it's when listening to you, it's very difficult to see how it can be better this year, but I'm sure it will be across the two, across National One and National Two. Some great highlights, as you say there, Ben, in terms of the National One new clubs coming up, the relegation fight going down to the final day as well in that league. But yeah, the National Two North title race was probably the highlight for myself, taking away from the overall role I have with National League Rugby, but from a very journalistic point of view, it was just a thrilling title race and probably the most exciting title race across the rugby landscape in England last year. So we are hoping for very much more of the same in 24-25. So just in terms of the preview show, Dan, what it is all about, we mentioned there we want to start putting the clubs a little bit more at the centre of what we do. And each week we will be having feature clubs, feature games of the week, which we will be deciding and featuring obviously on the preview show. And Ben has already mentioned one of those clubs, and our feature club and feature game in National One this week is Sedgley Park. They are at home to Esher, newly promoted Esher, on Saturday afternoon at Park Lane. It's a 2:30 kickoff. But before we kind of focus and go into our interview with Matt Riley of Sedgley Park, let's have a look at the new season, Ben, in National One for 24-25. I know obviously the rugby paper have spoken to a few coaches. You've done your previews in the rugby paper for the weekend just gone. So Ben, what are you kind of getting in terms of potentially a title race or teams that might be towards the top this year in National One, do you think?
Yeah, I remember speaking to Nick Easter, obviously Chinner, director of rugby. They ended up going up, and he described it as the most entertaining division in English rugby last year because of the permutations at the top and the bottom. When I spoke to him, I thought that was completely bang on. It's such a good league and a really tough one to call this year as well. Yeah, Plymouth Albion, very good last year. Tough place for opposition teams to go. They're always get really good support, quite difficult place to go week in, week out. I think Ryan Lamb's doing a fantastic job there. But then you've got the usual suspects, Rosslyn Park and Rams, who will definitely compete. No clubs come down for the championship though, so you'd expect it's a good opportunity for one of those clubs to take advantage. I think at the bottom, Canisha stop yo-yoing between divisions. They've gone from National 2 East to National 1. They've bounced between the two. They're really going to want to try and consolidate because they feel that that's their level. As new territory for Things Crusaders. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how they go from the West. I'm sure Steve Williams is building a very good squad to compete. Now they've got good links with Bristol Bears, their academy, so they're going to get a few players from that side. And then Rotherham Titans return to the third tier. That'll be exciting under a new director of rugby. Gareth Lewis did a fantastic job last season, didn't he? Ex-Huddersfield head coach. He led them to the title against a side that everyone thought had run away with it. So credit to him. But he's moved on, and they've got a very good coach in Harvey Billion. As director of rugby, everyone knows what he's capable of from his time at Jersey Reds, winning the championship in 2022-23. So yeah, Rosslyn Park always in the mix. Rams very close last year. I think Birmingham Moseley as well are in a good shout. They impressed, finishing top four. And then you've got Richmond. Interesting to see how they go. They don't really want to be at this level. They want to be back in the championship. They were disappointed last year to not really compete. They were very inconsistent. Obviously, a couple of years ago, Steve Hill moved on after a long tenure there. They've got Rob Powell leading things, and he'll be expecting to compete for promotion.
Yeah, and I think just on Richmond, Ben, I'm just having a quick look actually at the fixtures in front of me. Blackheath away to begin with, and then I think they're Roslyn Park away as well in the second week of the season. So they've got some really tasty fixtures to kick things off with. So it'll be interesting to see how they go, as you say, in 24-25. You mentioned kind of Rams and Roslyn Park there. Rams have been kind of a team that's been knocking on that door, haven't they, over the last few years. You mentioned Chinner and Nick Easter. Rams were fighting tooth and nail with them last year. I think they finished on 99 points, Rams, and missed out on the title. And the year, I think the 22-23, that epic title race with Cambridge and Sale FC, 114 points, and they still didn't get promoted. And even in the COVID year with the suspects you've mentioned there, Roslyn Park and Richmond, they were in the hunt. So, you kind of do potentially feel, Ben, that Rams will be wanting to take that next step this year.
Yes, no, exactly. They've got a very good fly half, Fraser Honey, who I know well, ex Red Ruth. Yeah, Seb Reynolds leads the things there. Yeah, I think they'll be up there competing. I also think Blackheath, who I sort of led the preview from in the rugby paper on Sunday. Yeah, that they've made some really impressive signings. Tex Kuvabati, ex Perpignan. And bona fide Fijian international, certainly sort of mid-20 caps. So that's very impressive. They're trying to fix their home form at Blackheath, turn it into a fortress. Yeah, James Shanahan was saying it's a bit too nice for teams to come to, but being such a nice pitch, maybe don't have the kind of tribal support that other clubs that I've mentioned that Plymouth Albion have. So they're trying to fix that because they were very good on the road last year, which is the home form that kind of let them down. So I expect Blackheath to be in the mix as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point you made there, Ben. I remember kind of looking at their sort of form going into the new year, and you could tell that away from home was where they were getting the results, and at the right time in the season, they were able to string, I think, 2 or 3 wins together at home, which was enough to kind of pull them away from any kind of relegation danger. And look, even looking at their 2 home fixtures, they do play Richmond and Roslin Park in terms of the first month of the season. So really interesting to see how James Shanahan's side get on there. And you mentioned the newly promoted teams in Rotherham, Dings, and Esher. Rotherham's sort of season where Gareth Lewis and Harvey Billion came in to continue the work they were doing and to get promoted in the way they did was fantastic. Obviously, Gareth, who has been such a massive part of National League Rugby over the years with Huddersfield and Rotherham stepping away. But it seems like, Ben, listening to you, that Harvey seems to be the perfect man to continue steering this Rotherham ship forward, given the amount of experience he's guarded over the last few years.
Yeah, he's been through a lot recently. Obviously, with Jersey Reds unfortunately folding, he's done a lot of consulting work, did a bit of work at Doncaster Knights. Yeah, and he's kind of been kind of floating around. So it's really great that he's got a full-time position and a project because he's someone that relishes in a project. I think you're right. He's the perfect man and so much experience because he played in the Premiership with Wasps. Yeah, a really, really great leader, good coach. And we're really excited to see how they go. I mean, Rotherham, they're a big club. They should be back in the third tier minimum and pushing for promotion. Really, hopefully in years to come. See how they go. But there's so many other teams in the league that'll be wanting to do that as well. So yeah, a very difficult league to go into for Rotherham, but interesting to see how they go under Harvey Billion.
Yeah, and yeah, as you quite rightly say, Ben, such a massive club. I expect Clifton Lane to be packed to the rafters this coming Saturday when they host Roslin Park. Really interesting game for Rotherham to kick things off with. We mentioned kind of Dings. You also mentioned Esher as well. And as I said, they are part of the National League Rugby Preview Show featured game of the week. They are away to Sedgley Park on Saturday afternoon, and we were delighted to catch up with one of Sedgley Park's legends. I hope you won't mind me saying that, in Matt Riley. I have to credit rugby statistician here, Stuart Farmer, who I think tweeted it, or it might have been actually the rugby papers, John Newcombe, who pushed it, Ben, that said Matt had played 439 games for Sedgley Park at the end of last season, and he became the player with the most appearances for a single club in the pro era, either side of the English Channel. So he's going to be pulling on his boots for a 19th season, and we were lucky enough to catch up with him earlier this week to preview their game against Esher. And as you can see, I'm now joined by Sedgley Park's Matt Riley, who is beginning or looking forward to his 19th season with the club. Matt, thanks so much for joining us on the National League Rugby Preview Show. Are you excited as the rest of us for the start of the new year?
Yeah, I think we're just itching to get going now. I think it's been 4 months since we've had a game, and you enjoy the couple of months that you get off, and then once you get into the summer, then you after 2 months of pre-season training and a couple of friendlies, you're just itching to get the league season underway at you and just see where you are and see if all the hard work you've done in the summer has paid off, and just see where you are as a group.
Yeah, and before we kind of get into the season, I wanted to ask you how the body is, Matt, because I believe at the weekend you were doing a bit of a challenge or a bit of a run for an amazing cause. I think just looking at my notes, it was running a mile every hour on the hour for 24 hours. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just basically raising some funds for my eldest son Jackson. He's currently playing for Holton Hornets, the rugby league side in Widnes. They're under 14s at the minute, but next season when they're under 15s, we're going to take them away to Salou on a rugby tour. So they've done a couple of events already, like Snowdon and stuff, and we were just looking for something else to try and raise some funds, and we come up with this idea. It's a little similar to the one that Kevin Sinfield did for Rob Burrows. He did the 101 miles, which is just over 4 miles an hour on average. So we only did 1 mile per hour, but my God, I honestly don't know how he did it because that was probably the hardest thing physically and mentally I've ever done. And the body's not quite got over it just yet. Hopefully, I'll be all right for Tuesday night's training session.
I'm sure you will, Matt. You're definitely putting in the hard yards already before the start of the season. As we mentioned at the top of our chat, it will be your 19th season with Sedgley Park. And I remember me and you kind of were tweeting each other when you decided to, or it was announced that you were gonna pull on the boots for another season. So how hard or how easy was that decision for you, Matt?
Um, Very easy in a way, but also, there's lots to think about, isn't there? There's quite a lot of the people I've played with for the last 10 or 12 years seem to have finished or moved on to other clubs. And, obviously my brother's still there and there's still a couple of lads. There's plenty of new faces, some young, hungry lads. It would have been easy for me to finish this year and sort of, go out on a little bit of a high, having got promoted to Nat 1 and secured our status. But at the same time, I still feel I've got a little bit to give, and I'm still hungry to try and play a little bit more if I can. So yeah, I've signed on, and that's the easy bit. The hard bit is trying to get selected, isn't it? And trying to work hard enough and put myself in the position to get selected each week. So that's what I'll be trying to do this year, and see how long it lasts. Hopefully I can get to the end of the season, and then I don't know, maybe think about the season after. Who knows? But yeah, just try to get to Christmas for now and see what happens.
Getting another milestone in there, Matt, with the 20th season if you can. But let's focus on the 19th one to begin with. You mentioned the word sort of hungry there, and I was going to ask you kind of what motivates you to keep going, especially at National One level. Is it that kind of level of competitiveness, that Tuesday, Thursday, the carrot at the end of the week, a big game on a Saturday that gets you out of bed and thinks I can still do this for another year?
Well, I do like routine in my life. So yeah, I think the rugby gives me a good routine. I know it seems like it's a hard chore going to training on a Tuesday and Thursday after you've been in work all day, but I actually enjoy that. I share lists with my brother, so I get to see him for a few hours as well. I enjoy the Saturday mornings. My son comes along, my family come and watch. And I think once you've done it for so long, it's probably harder to get out of that routine, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I've done it for that long. I don't see a reason to stop just yet. And I do realise I'm not naive enough to think it's going to last forever. If it was to stop tomorrow, I'd have no complaints. I've had plenty of friends over the years who've had to finish in their early 20s, late 20s, early 30s through no choice of their own, through injury and stuff like that. So, I do understand how lucky I've been and how lucky I am. And, if I get to choose when I can retire, then, I'll feel very blessed in doing that. But at the minute, yeah, just take each week as it comes and see where we get to.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Matt. You've actually answered my next question, really. Like, do you not feel lucky, but do you kind of look back on the career you've had and think it could have ended at any time? Rugby is such a fluctuant sport in that way, where one injury could end it all. So do you feel kind of lucky that you are able to make a decision this summer and go, yes, I can, I am fit enough, I am well enough to give National One another crack?
And I think that's part of the reason why I'm carrying on, yeah, because I do feel able enough to do it. And yeah, I could have finished and, my body feels fine. But I think while I'm still able, I definitely feel like if I stopped, I probably wouldn't carry it. If I had 6 months off or a year off, I probably wouldn't be able to carry on. So I think while I'm still in that routine of Tuesday, Thursdays and still playing and the body's still a bit used to it, I'm just going to carry on. But yeah, so just carry on for now and see where we get to.
And I guess as well, Matt, the way kind of Sedge performed last year back in National One also maybe adds to that hunger and fuels the fire a little bit. I know kind of at Christmas time, we were looking at the table and I think some people might have been surprised that you guys were top four after coming straight back up. And I know you tweeted a bit in the second half of the season that results potentially didn't go the way you would like to. But overall, when you did finish the season, that final whistle went in April. Was the objective hit for you guys?
Yeah, in a way, I think it's good that we were disappointed in the second half of the season. I mean, when we went back into National One, it was a little bit of the unknown because we hadn't been in it for so long. We'd been out of the league for 10 years. There was plenty of different sides who we haven't played against. There's some long trips in there and some exciting trips, some new clubs that we haven't been to. But yeah, I think after the first month or two and some of the results we had against some of the established sides in National One, things were going well, but that's the thing with Sedgley. We never seem to. We don't get carried away with big results. We're always striving to get better, and we're always pushing to improve on a Tuesday and Thursday night, and that's probably why I love the club so much. So I think because of the start we'd had up to Christmas, and then we reassessed and give ourselves more targets for the second half of the season, and yeah, we came close in a few games after Christmas. I think that little run that we had where we played Rams, Rosslyn Park and Chinner on the bounce. We drew with Rosslyn Park at home. We nearly beat Chinner away, who eventual winners of the league. And we did all right at Rams, but I think that just took so much out of us physically and mentally, probably more than we thought at the time. And then we went on a bit of a losing streak. We lost against teams who were lower than us in the table. we got stuffed away at Taunton, we lost away at Leicester Lions and stuff like that. And I think it just took a lot out of us, to be honest. But yeah, it's good that we're setting lofty targets, and we'll do the same again this year. And no team goes into games to try and lose, do they? So we'll be attacking every week, and I'm trying to win every week if we can.
Yeah, and I mean, just on Saturday's opposition, Matt, you might not be able to answer this again. I know we're speaking on Monday evening, so you might not have had time to analyse Esher, but obviously bouncing straight back up into National One for this year. I mean, Sam Morley at Fly Half has been pulling the strings for them really well over the last couple of seasons. James Botterill on the wing was, I think, the top try scorer in National League Rugby last season. So what have you kind of expected from Esher? Or again, is that going to come kind of Tuesday, Thursday when you take a little bit of look at the opposition?
Yeah, we've had a little look at a couple of the games from last season, but it's difficult to know whether they're still going to play a similar way or whether they've got new recruits as well. We played Esher quite a lot when I was younger at Sedge, and they were always tough games, home and away, always entertaining and high scoring. I know they scored heavily last season as well, so that'll be one thing we'll be trying to do, especially being at home, first game of the season. We'll be trying to keep their score low and hopefully score more than them and get the win. It's going to be a big day for Sedgley. There's Memorial Day for Dave Smith, our long-standing chairman, who was 30 years at chairman and then president, passed away unfortunately last year. But they're gonna the first home game of every season going to sort of celebrate what he did for Sedgley and his legacy that he's left. So there's going to be a lot of people there, a lot of family and friends. So they'll get all the stuff off the field right, and hopefully we can do the job on the field for them. It was sad when he passed away, and I think quite a lot probably still haven't got over it, and it still doesn't feel real. You just get used to seeing someone at the club and all the work that he's done over the years. You only have to look at the clubhouse and the pitch and the stand, the balconies, everything that H. Smith and Son, all the money that they've put in over the years and supported. The club wouldn't be where it is without him, his brothers, his family. So yeah, the least we can do is pay our respects on the field and try and get the result that makes them proud.
Yeah. And just finally, Matt, I was going to mention kind of aims and goals for this season. You used the word kind of lofty targets before, but is it all about getting off to a good start? We know how difficult National League Rugby is, but if you can build your form in the first 2 months of the season before maybe that November break, it just sets the platform, doesn't it, for what you can potentially achieve this year?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we've not really set any long-term targets at the minute, but like you said, if we can get off to a good start, it just breeds confidence as well, and you sort of live off that. If suddenly if you lose a couple of home games early on and you're under the pressure a little bit, results tend to fall the other way. The 50-50 results. So yeah, we'll just be attacking every game, and we'll look forward to Esher on Saturday, and then as soon as that's finished, we've got Sale away, which will be an epic derby as well, local derby. So yeah, really excited. I think National One is, we've been out of it for so long, like I said, and you hear people talk about, it's the most exciting league in the pyramid and stuff like that. And now that we're back in, I can completely understand why. And, I'd love to be a supporter watching our games week in, week out, because it must be exciting.
So many thanks to Matt Riley for joining us. He is hoping to be in the side for Saturday against Esher. I'm sure he'll be around the club either way. He's such a massive part of what Sedgley Park do. And as I said, they are one of our feature games on the preview show this week. So if you are at a loose end on Saturday afternoon, and you are in the Greater Manchester area, why not head down to Park Lane to get your fix of rugby? Because certainly for the first 2 weekends of September, National One and National Two is the highest level of domestic rugby you can watch in England. So if we are pretty much certain that there is going to be a National League Rugby club in your local areas, and if it is Sedgley Park, why not give it a try this weekend? So that is our feature game, Sedgley Park versus Esher. But as we've already kind of touched on, Ben, there's so many interesting fixtures, isn't there, this weekend in National One? Is there anything jumping out the page for you?
Yes, yeah. In terms of the rugby paper, we've our feature game this weekend. We've gone for Rotherham Titans against Rosslyn Park, which you kind of touched on a bit earlier. It's been really interesting to see how Titans go up against a promotion hopeful side. And Rosslyn Park, under Kieran Power, they've got hefty aspirations. They've got some really good players, guys like Jack Rossiter, that are always a threat out wide. Very good pack as well. So that's going to be a hell of a challenge for Rotherham. But at home, they'll under a new director of rugby, I think they'll be backing themselves to certainly compete. I think that'll be a very, very good match, and it'll be a test of both sides' credentials early on.
I agree with you. It's, you know what, as soon as the fixture list came out, that was one that definitely stood out for us as well, Ben. And hopefully by the magic of our creative director, Matt Scofitt, you should be able to see the fixtures come up now whilst me and Ben are talking. We mentioned kind of Blackheath versus Richmond, Rotherham Titans versus Rosslyn Park, the feature game for the rugby paper. Rams starting their campaign at home to Darlington Moden Park. I think I might be right in saying that Darlington actually beat Rams at Old Bath Road last season, so that will be very interesting. Sedgley Park versus Esher, the feature game for us on the preview show. Sale FC go to Plymouth Albion. New Boys Deans Crusaders are away to Birmingham Moseley, and Bishop Stortford Leicester Lions should be a really intriguing one, given these two sides were embroiled in a fight to the death last year in terms of they're going to the final day of the season in terms of the relegation battle, but both surviving. So interesting to see how they will get on in this upcoming campaign. So that is kind of our National 1 chat done. So let's dive straight into National 2 North if we can. Ben, we mentioned Rotherham quite a bit in National 1, in our National 1 chat to do with the epic title race they had with Leeds Tigers. It was just phenomenal from start to finish, but looking at Leeds Tigers now from a National 2 North perspective, 121 points last year, over 1,000 points scored, lost just twice. Is it difficult to look past them without writing everybody else off before a ball's been kicked, before a ball's been touched this year?
I think there's some quality sides in the league, so I think you'd be pretty foolish to write everyone else off. But they're going in as favourites. Spoke to Pete Seaborn in the paper, and he's very open and honest, and they know that they're the biggest club in the league, and they should be competing for promotion. They should be winning that league really on paper. It's a bit of a double-edged sword being the biggest club in the league, because teams will be up for it against them. They'll be circling that fixture and really gunning to try and beat a massive club. They shouldn't have lost out on promotion. They'll need to reset. But they face a tough match at home to Tyndale, who can be tricky customers themselves. Leeds obviously benefit close link with Leeds Beckett University, big player pool. But like Pete Seaborn said, they need to be on it for 26 games this year, not 23. So such is the quality of the league. Yeah, I expect Leeds to certainly be up there competing and leading the way. But there's some other very good sides as well up there.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of their opening game is against Tyndale this weekend, Ben. And I know in your preview for the rugby paper, we've mentioned it on TRU and Talking Rugby Union as well, that obviously Dean Richards is now at the helm at Tyndale as well, familiar face to all rugby fans. So it makes them a very interesting. They were already an intriguing prospect, I think, Tyndale, because they've built so well over the last couple of seasons. But having Dean Richards in there, having Carl Ferns in there as well, it does make them an interesting opposition for Leeds at the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. It kind of shows you that there's no easy games in National Two North. Dean Richards, a hell of a coaching pedigree, and yeah, they've strengthened across the board. They look like they mean business. He hasn't gone there obviously just to settle for a mid-table and National Two North season. They'll be wanting to compete at the top. So yeah, that'll be a very tough game. I think there's some good teams that will challenge Leeds.
Yeah, and I think your point's well made there, Ben, that no team, obviously, from National 1 is coming down to National 2 North either, with both of those clubs who were relegated, Taunton and Cinderford, going into National 2 West, which is what we'll talk about a bit later. So quite rightly, given Leeds' phenomenal season last year, they will probably go in as favourites, but I'm sure Pete Seaborn, the guys down at West Park Leeds, will be very much relishing that challenge and hoping to go again in 24-25. Just in terms of the changes in National 2 North, the only team to come up from level 5 were Harrogate. They had 1 year away, an immediate return to National 2 North after winning Regional 1 North East last season. And I think between the Walls at Harrogate, they will be hoping that they can improve on the National 2 North record. I think 8 of the last 56 matches at this level they have won. The rest of them haven't gone their way, and they'll be determined to set the record straight. And in just looking at the opening day fixtures now, Ben, a trip to Billingham for Harrogate seems like quite an interesting prospect, doesn't it? Because Billingham survived relegation on the final day of the season. They had a really strong end to the season. So that could be a really good opportunity for Harrogate to open their account this season.
Yes, definitely. Billingham, they kind of survived by the skin of their teeth. It went down to the final day, like you said. But they're a good club. They're a good club up in the northeast. They represent it very well. And yeah, and I think that'll be a very very close match. Kind of Billingham, they did what they set out to do: survive, consolidate, which is going to be the same for most newly promoted sides across the leagues. And then they're looking to build now. I think they'll be looking to push forward rather than look behind their shoulder. So that'll be a very interesting battle. Harrogate again will just want to survive after like you said, quite a poor record in the national leagues. So that'll be an interesting battle. I don't know who's going to come up top there. That'll be certainly one to look out for.
Yeah, and is there anything else, Ben, that's kind of caught the eye in National Two North going into the first weekend?
Yes, definitely. Our feature game in the rugby paper is Sheffield against Fylde. Anthony Post has done a fantastic job with Sheffield, a record finish of third in National 2 North with 17 wins. It was almighty impressive. They had an amazing end to the season. And Fylde in fifth, but they're always a contender at the top positions. So it should be a cracker really. I mean, Fylde are always highly thought of whenever you speak to any other National Two North coach. They're always expecting to be up there competing probably with the likes of Leeds. So I think both those sides will be hoping to keep up with Leeds Tykes, and they'll desperately hope for a win to start their campaign.
Yeah, I think Sheffield were probably from my point of view, the surprise packers across the whole of the National League Rugby last year. You know, that finishing third as did. You mentioned the coaching staff there have done a brilliant job at Aberdale Park, and some of the talent they've got in the squad. I know from our point of view in terms of the media team of the season for National Two North, and I know with the rugby papers team of the season as well, Ben. There were a lot of representatives from Sheffield, you likes of Elliot Fisher, Christian Hooper as well. So these guys will be, and I'm sure Sheffield will be looking that they've got this platform here, and we'll be hoping to see where it goes this year, as you quite rightly say.
Yes, no, absolutely. They'll be gunning for it. They'll be hoping to compete for at least top three, and then yeah, it's all about when they play those matches against Leagues Tykes, try and cause an upset, try and yeah do all you can just to try and stay in the fight, and then try to take advantage later on. I think they'll be looking to compete as high up as possible.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more with that, Ben. So let's just have a quick look at the fixtures. I've already touched on quite a few there. We've mentioned Billingham at home to Harrogate. Expect a decent crowd there. Up in the northeast, Billingham doing great things at the moment. Hull versus Otley is one of many Yorkshire derbies that we will be seeing throughout the season. Hull Ionians take on Lim at Bransington Park. We mentioned kind of Leeds Tykes at home to Tidale. Leeds didn't lose a game at home at all last season, I don't think. So that is really interesting to see how they get on at the weekend. Preston Grasshoppers versus Chester. It's Lightfoot Green. We mentioned Sheffield versus Fylde, and Wharfdale, who finished fourth last season, they host Sheffield Tigers. So it'd be interesting to see if Wharfdale can follow potentially Sheffield's example of building on a really positive campaign in 2024-25. So National 2 North, we've had a brief look at that. Let's go into National 2 East now, and similarly then to National 2 North, no team has dropped down from National 1 into National 2 East. And I know for the rugby paper preview, you focused around Barnes, and speaking to Director of Rugby Jack Heald, who's always willing to give his time, always willing to give his views around National Rugby, especially National 2 East over the last couple of seasons. So what did he kind of have to say? What were the vibes from him going into what is looking like a very competitive league this year?
Yeah, you're right. Jack certainly knows his stuff when it comes to National Two East. Yeah, he said he very clearly thinks that they'll be the top four. He expects them to obviously be in the mix, but alongside Dorking, Tonbridge, Juddians, and Bury St Edmunds, he thinks that they're going to be the four standout sides. It's a golden opportunity for one of those clubs to take advantage of being no relegated club coming down from National One into the East. Whilst you mentioned National Two North not having any relegated clubs, you would probably say Leeds Tykes are firm favourites. Whereas those four clubs that I mentioned, they've probably got equal opportunities really to take advantage. But Barnes have recruited well. All four have. So it'll be very difficult to pick one out of those four. Um, you would have to say that Bury St Edmunds being on there is a little bit of a surprise because they finished the season very poorly last year. They started off well, second half of the campaign it kind of unravelled. I'm speaking as to Jacob Ford this year for a piece in Sunday's paper. Interesting to see how they plan on fixing that because they couldn't seem to stop the rot last year. They've recruited a lot, certainly from abroad as well. So I mean, it's exciting to know how they shape up next year. Dorking always very strong under Armin Rue, very good director of rugby and someone who's built something quite special at Dorking. While they'd love to go that one step further and get into the third tier. And Tonbridge Juddians kind of finished a little bit down, about fifth last year. So yeah, that'll be expecting for a better season this year. But yeah, if Jack thinks very highly of them, then they must be doing something right.
Yeah, he's the expert, Ben. We're certainly not. Jack's very much the expert when it comes to all things national to east. As you mentioned, Barnes, Dorking might well be the usual suspects. They do play each other as per usual, actually, in the opening month of the season, and their meetings have been ridiculously close over the last few seasons. I think an average of 3 points separating them in the last four fixtures, and both of them finishing second and third in the last two seasons. So we expect them to be fighting towards the top. You mentioned how well Bury St Edmunds have recruited Ben there. You know, it's been very noticeable the great work the media team are doing there by announcing some of the new signings, some eye-catching names. Tunbridge Judians, as you say, finished the season pretty strongly last year, but will certainly want to be building on fifth place. Henley Hawks are always there or thereabouts. So I'm not going to take out a £5 note from a wallet and put a bet on this one because it's going to be very, very difficult to predict who might go up this season, who will be number one spot in National 2 East. But what will be intriguing, Ben, is there's three newly promoted sides in National 2 East this season in the form of Oxford Harlequins, Colchester and Havant. Oxford Harlequins have gone from level 6 to level 4 in the last three seasons whilst remaining fully amateur. So it's some achievement from Pete Davis and Stu Wells to get the side internationally rugby. And I'm right in saying, Ben, you spoke to Colchester and Havant, the other two newly promoted sides, for pieces during the summer. So it's always really interesting to hear what promoted clubs have to say going into a new league, a new season, what their ambition's going to be. Are they going to happy with just staying up? So can you give us an insight into what Colchester and Havant might be thinking going into a new challenge this season?
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was very interesting, actually, what Jack Heald said about the promoted sides. He felt that Colchester were very established at level five. They've kind of bid their time at level five and then one promotion at just the right time. Well, haven't have seemed to just risen through the league. Same with Oxford Harlequins. But Jack thinks that that will suit Colchester a lot better than it will the other two sides. That's kind of the way he sees things. As Colchester have recruited a lot. It's only up the road from me, so you get a feel from it from being my local side. They've basically got a brand new backline in the forwards. Alex Gray, in particular, from Wales Sevens, is a real statement signing, certainly at this level. Speaking to people at the club, that they like a fast, expansive game, but the concern was that going into National Two, is there would be a little bit lightweight in the backs, you know, a few kilograms less than their opposition. Well, with a virtually new backline, I'm sure that's been addressed, and it'll be interesting to see how they go. Colchester, as well as Havant, will be expecting some big crowds. You're looking close to 1,000 people at their games, which will be amazing for National Two. So I'm looking forward to seeing the atmosphere at those clubs. Havant, they've got a lot of for where they're situated, a lot of Army and Navy boys coming across. Um, Will Knight says no real superstars or anything, but yeah, like Colchester, big crowds, good support in the area. The demise of London Irish has hurt them in terms of player access from top level clubs. So all about survival next season. I'm sure the same for Colchester.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The attendance thing you said there, Ben, is absolutely spot on because I was reading some stuff on Colchester's website at the start of August, and they were hoping that the crowds they were getting at level five will continue. And we are going to talk to Rob Matthews and Will Knight. It's our second feature game of the week on the preview show of Havant hosting Sevenoaks, and they both said the same that the crowds they were getting last year were superb, and the following these clubs are getting is brilliant. So to see two newly promoted clubs have this following, have this energy going into the season, I'm sure Oxford Harlequins are similar. It makes it for really interesting spectacle, doesn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. I think it shows that the value of National League Rugby. It shows the value of the lower leagues. People want a nice day out watching some good quality rugby in a nice environment. The facilities at Colchester are unbelievable. They've got beautiful fast-paced 4G pitch, lovely balcony there. It's a very good day out for people to go. The city's very excited about it. I've seen, like you said, I've seen stuff on their social media, and they're really trying to grow their ticket sales and create excitement. And I think Craig Burrows is doing a fantastic job of that. Exactly the same with Havant. They seem like they've got really good, backing that's for quite a few years now has risen. And yeah, people want to go to matches. They want to watch good rugby, but they want to have a good atmosphere as well. They want to have, get a bit of noise, a bit of tribalism, a really a good following, and it means a lot, isn't it? Kind of that 16th man that's going to drive the team on. And hopefully both those sides have successful seasons.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So let's dive into our second feature game of the week then, Havant versus Sevenoaks. And we decided to focus on Havant this week, given it is their first time in National League Rugby for 15 years. And we spoke to the dynamic coaching duo of Rob Matthews and Will Knight about what they're expecting for this season. So I'm delighted to say we are now joined by the dynamic coaching duo of Rob Matthews and Will Knight of Havant. Guys, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Brilliant to see you. And I guess first of all, Rob, to start with yourself, how are the emotions going into this week, going into Saturday with Havant back in level 4 rugby for the first time in 15 years?
Look, I think the bottom line is it's something that we've been working towards, in particular for the last sort of 6-7 years, when we started to really see an improvement on the pitch. It's something that Will and I have spoken about, but this isn't just about Will and I or even the coaching team. This is about the players. So that when we did achieve promotion last year, the first thing we did was talk to the players about, okay, what does the next step look like? Because the reality of it is, whilst, Will in particular has a massive impact on what the players do on the pitch, it's actually the players that deliver. And we've got to take those with us to make sure they're on the journey. And I think that's the point that we really want to try and get across is, this isn't just we've been promoted, let's do something totally different. This is about the next iteration of what we've been doing over the last 15 years. So when Will and I started, we had 7 people at training. It was a bit after a disastrous, we just ended up losing and being demoted. We then ended up essentially really fighting to be able to get players in. At the end of that first season, we ended up losing to Tring by over 100 points. I think it was something like 102-7. We actually scored first, which was a bit of a bonus. But then the floodgates opened. But we look back at the team now, and there are still a handful of people left. But that's when the journey truly started for us, and we've sort of moved forward. So we started probably 7 years ago, where we really started to look at the psychology of how we're actually going to create a team. And I think that's the critical piece here, is about, if you play as a team, then in reality is you're going to get success on the field. And, we've had, we started off with mantra of, we talked about warriors to champions, because we had a side that could battle, but actually is we were losing games that we should be winning. And the first 2 or 3 seasons, we had a warriors to champions mentality. So actually the end of last season was almost the closure of that point to then start something new. But at the centre of everything we do has to be the players, because ultimately they're the ones that put their bodies on the line for 80 minutes on a Saturday. They're the ones that get the results. They're the ones that score the tries, have the driving line-outs, and all the things that we see. Will creates the structure, but in reality, what I do is look at how do we create the, in particular, the culture. We talked about with the board about maintaining the culture off the field, and that's what we've been doing really an awful lot of over the last 6 or 7 years. Is just small iterations in our culture, making sure the team stay together after training. So we put food on after training for the players. Making sure that the boys stay behind and have a beer. Not everyone drinks, so obviously that there is a soft drinks as well. But in reality, it's all part of creating and maintaining that what we called up the hill mentality, and I like to think that a few of the clubs are going to get pretty annoyed when we sing the Havant are coming up the hill after victories this season. Pre-season's gone well and would indicate that we're going to be more than competitive. So I sincerely hope that some of the clubs in the league will get to hear that ringing out from the changing rooms after the game.
We started from a very challenging base, with the players that were with us. It was hard work for those that were involved. And as we've progressed through the years, we've been joined by a number of people from around the area. And as Rob said, the sort of what we've termed the homecoming, the guys coming back to Havant who've been elsewhere, perhaps gone and played a higher standard of rugby, whether that's through going away to university, being in the services, being posted, just in terms of their own rugby journey. But there is a sort of theme that people come back. And that's meant that we now have a great deal of experience within the squad. But the core of that squad is the same people that stepped onto that pitch 13 years ago and said, put their hands up and said, oh, okay, I'm on it. I'm going to do this. And, You know, one of them is my son, who's been the captain for all but one of those years, and he's been a kind of a talisman for the team. I think a lot of players have joined along the journey, and part of that has been because they've played alongside him at county level, they've played alongside him elsewhere, or played against him. And that's not to say, you know, he's the be all and end all, but what he's been is a constant. And we've had a number of those individuals, and we've got players in our squad now that have played 250 games, played 150 games, played, you know, those kinds of figures, and that creates a bond, not just with between the players and the coaches. And when we got over the line last year, it was the end of an awful lot of hard work, a lot of soul searching, a lot of trying to find different ways of doing things. And yeah, it was a tremendous relief, but just a tremendous amount of pride to be able to do it with a group of people, some of whom, if I'm being honest, I've coached since they were 16 years old, because I was coaching before I got involved with the first team. I was coaching the Colts, and we've taken them through, and I've known them an awful long time. So yeah, massive pleasure, and now just excitement about the next step and what comes next. You know, these guys are hugely competitive. The biggest thing they talked about when we won last year is that they wanted to create the environment to build the squad that meant that we stayed there. We don't come straight back down as so many teams that get promoted do. So that's where we're at, and you know, we're certainly looking forward to the challenge, under no illusions about how tough it's going to be. You know, I think there's enough experience around the squad, around the coaches, to know that when we step up, it's always tough, and we will have some difficult days, no doubt, this season. But at the same time, if we can consolidate and stay in the league, and push towards our second team also getting promoted up to what would be level 6, then the club will be in a fantastic place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I know, Rob, we've talked about kind of the players and the journey you've been on, where kind of the entire first team squad left. You had these players you built from there, but we can't not talk about sort of the commitment you and Will have had to the club. You know, over 300 games in charge. We mentioned off air that you both have the picture over your, I think, well over your left shoulder, if I'm doing it right, with which kind of was for volunteer of the year for last year when you did kind of got over the 300 games. So as Will just said there, Rob, it must be a sense of pride, proudness, excitement going into Saturday, given how much the club means to you both. I mean, I think you've been associated with the club nearly 30 years, Rob and Will nearly 50 years.
Yeah, look, 100% is, you know, one of the things that when you are either a player, volunteer, or supporter of Havant is it creates just this bond within you that actually is something that really keeps bringing you back, as Will's already said. And you know, I was a player, joined in, you know, not February '96, and I think we talked about that we celebrated our 50th anniversary of the minis and juniors forming in March, and Will was in the first intake. So, you know, I think between us, we've got probably the best part of 80 years where we've been together. But I think it's also really important to note that, you know, Will and I will have a huge amount of pride because of where we've come from, the battle we've got, and how we've done it. You know, it's interesting talking to. We were chatting to some other clubs, and you know, there's this misconception that we were paying players for the last few years because that was the only way that you were going to achieve what you wanted to do. You know, I can categorically say on the record we didn't pay our players. You know, and I'm very happy to stand up anyone who wants to challenge us. But what we created was an atmosphere that made the players feel like that they were being valued and rewarded, and that didn't necessarily meant putting pounds, shillings, and pence in their pocket. And that's what we built. And actually, that's not something that happens overnight. You know, we talked about, you know, in terms of the journey we've been on, and that journey has ripples elsewhere. So other clubs took active decisions not to invest in their squads last year because of what we've been building over the last 3 or 4 years since COVID, and the fact that we only just missed out from promotion the year before last. We ended up finishing second, again, you know, behind Wimbledon, who then have come back down again, and we beat at the weekends. And so, you know, we go in very open-eyed, but with a huge amount of pride of getting us back to the national leagues. Both Will and I played National League Rugby for Havant and knows what that means. But actually is it's fundamentally different to what it is today. You can look around in terms of, you know, some of the clubs that have gone through and with the right investment and support. And, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, but obviously Worcester achieved an awful lot as they invested through. You know, you look at teams like Caldy that have gone through the leagues and basically have managed to sustain themselves at a championship level. Cambridge, you know, it wasn't so long ago that we were playing teams like Cambridge, Amptill and others. And this is where we believe that, you know, we have essentially been on a journey towards, and this is about, you know, how do we sustain that? And that's all about being on and off the pitch. And that's one of the critical points that I think that we have to build upon, is it's not just about the pride that Will, myself and the players will do. It's hopefully the 300-400 supporters that turn up every week that will have seen us, seen the journey that we've been on and feel part of it, because that's really important in terms of, you know, most people will say that Havant is the best, worst place to come. You know, we have great facilities. We pride ourselves on making sure that everyone is welcome and making sure that we have a beer in the bar afterwards. But if you're the opposition, it's not a nice place to come, to be honest with you, because the fans are very supportive of the home team. So I think that whilst Will and I will have, you know, the immense amount of pride that you can't really put into words, I'd like to think that there's probably 600, 700, 800, 1,000 people that will be proud of what we actually achieve on Saturday when we run out and we actually return back to the national leagues, because they've been on that journey with us.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, doing the club proud, Rob, is something you guys will absolutely look to do throughout the season, but certainly the first month of the season. And I'm right in saying you've got 3 home games out of the first 4, which is always a nice way to start, Rob. So is that also adding to the excitement value of people coming to your place or new clubs coming to your place and experiencing what Havant's all about, as well as having that great backing behind you?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think that over the last few years, through our few reorganisations, we've played new clubs like Marlborough, you know, but we are going to be reacquainted this year with teams like Oxford Harlequins. And, you know, and that's going to be exciting to see how they have changed and developed. You know, we have people that seem to spend all their lives tracking Facebook pages to see who signed what, who, where, when. And, you know, I think in reality, you know, there are teams that will know what it's like. You know, we have our compatriots this weekend, or our should I say, our competitors this weekend, are Sevenoaks. Well, you know, their head coach came to watch our quarter-final against Camberley in the Papa John's Cup last year. You know, and we know each other quite well, and had a little bit of banter from the stands as he watched. But you know that there are acquaintances there from people that we have seen over the last few years. You know, we played with Dorking, so I'm looking forward to, you know, meeting up with you know, with Armand again and having a chat, because, you know, rugby is about one big family. There are some new teams in there. You know, Tunbridge Juddians, we haven't played for a few years. Barnes, we haven't played for a few years. Guernsey, we haven't played, which I think is a challenge in itself with an early morning flight and whatever. But the same goes for them when they come over. But to start this season, having 3 home games, I think is going to be beneficial to us. But the quid pro quo is, it means that just after Christmas, we've got away games when it's probably in the harshest, the darkest, the coldest conditions. And we've got long journeys to basically go, including Guernsey. So look, you know, I think that we're going to be more than competitive. I think that we're going to put a good, you know, make a good account of ourselves. There are, as Will said, some really tough games with established sides at Nat 2 that will have been disappointed that they didn't get promoted last year. But ultimately is, you know, that journey we've built on that really has built that team spirit. And in those moments when it really is getting tough, you know, I think that the team will show what they've shown over the last few years and really show what we're about.
Absolutely, Rob. And obviously, we're focusing on having you guys are the feature game of the week against Sevenoaks. So I've got to ask about Sevenoaks as well. I know we're speaking on Monday evening, Will, but I guess you guys would have done your due diligence, had a look at the performances potentially last year. They seem like a very young group of players who are playing a decent brand of rugby, and under Adam, a couple of the boys, I think, were involved in Kent's County Championship winning team as well earlier in the summer. So kind of what are you expecting from Sevenoaks as they come to your place on Saturday, Will?
exactly that, a highly competitive side that will come and play an exciting brand of rugby. I mean, that's what we remember about Sevenoaks a couple of years ago when we were playing against them. We have had them watched, of course, and they seem to be playing that same brand of rugby. So that's what we expect, and that's what we're going to go and form our plans around. How do we counter that, challenge that, and exert our own brand of rugby onto the guys from Sevenoaks. But yeah, what I'm expecting a start a season game. It is that as well. It's all, as we were saying off air, all the preseason in the world is great, but until you actually get into league action, you don't really get that sense of where you're at. But I believe it will be a very, very competitive game. I think it will be a tough game, played at a high pace. Obviously, that's one of the advantages of the artificial surface we play on, that it's a perfect track all the time. And I expect Sevenoaks to come with all their big guns ready to try and knock us over. And we'll be doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and expected a tough game, Rob, but also we spoke briefly off there, expecting another hopefully decent crowd for you guys at the weekend. You mentioned when you were at level 5, some of the crowds you were getting could rival some teams in National 1, which is really positive to hear. So expecting another good turnout at the weekend.
Oh, 100%. Is we have a pre-match lunch before the game. There's and it'd be rude of me not to basically plug that and say that there's still some seats available. But it's been interesting how that they've been selling very well, because people want to see. It feels a bit like the first game back after COVID, when lots of people wanted to come and see, actually what is this all about? What's the journey on? And as a club, we've invested in things like having an outside bar, making sure that those that want to come and watch can have the best experience that they can. But equally is that Havant, and it's very cliche to say about the 16th man, but it's very true with we've got a relatively small stand that holds sort of 250 people, but when they're on voice and they're getting behind the team, it makes a massive difference. And that's what we want to be making sure that we're creating, having 2 or 3 people deep around the pitch as well. It's a massive family of around what we do and how we do it. And I sincerely hope and believe that if we get it right on the pitch, that we'll be able to celebrate with the supporters, the volunteers, and the players in the bar afterwards. But as Will says, it's going to be incredibly tough.
Well, a huge thanks to Rob and Will for the time. You can sense just listening to them the excitement they've got going into their first game against Sevenoaks on Saturday in National 2 East. They some of the bits of the interview weren't able to include just in terms of timing for the show. They've got incredible squad depth, 60 players coming down to training during the summer, which is probably the envy of some other clubs in terms of how many numbers they're getting down. They've got a squad, as Ben talked about before, full of experience, but they've got some young lads coming in who have played university rugby as well. So it seems like a great blend, exciting times for a club that has been on the rise and a roller coaster really over the last few years, but now find themselves back at level 4 for the first time in 15 years. And as I said, they are our feature game this week on the preview show. If you are interested, by the way, of going down to Havant on Saturday afternoon, down to Hooks Lane, I believe when we did speak to Rob and Will, that there are still pre-match lunch tickets still available. The gates open at 12, as does the bar. It's a 3 p.m. kickoff, and I believe there is some post-match entertainment on as well. So as Ben said before, yes, it's about the 80 minutes rugby, but it's all about enjoying the full day itself. So if you are interested in getting down to Havant, you want to find a bit more information about it, do email events at havantrfc.co.uk. Visit the website, check out their social media as well. I'm sure you can find all the details to be part of what will be a very special day for the club on Saturday afternoon. So Havant versus Sevenoaks is the feature game for National League Rugby's preview show. But what about the rugby paper, Ben? Is there anything that stands out for you going into the start of National 2 East?
No, I think the one you guys have picked, I think, will be a very good match. I'm looking at Old Albanian against Henley Hawks. That's last season's 8th against 4th. Henley will want to get off to a good start and really challenge the top 3. they'll probably be quite disappointed not to be mentioned by Jack Hildon in his predicted front runners, considering how well Henley did last year. So I'm sure that didn't go down very well. I think they're a very good side, well coached, old Albanian as well, good history in National Two. So that'll be a very good match. I think certainly Old Albanian at home they tend to be quite strong. So potentially a challenge for Henley Hawks this Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we mentioned Henley, didn't we? Didn't we, Ben, in terms of potentially one of the front runners? So Luke Allen will be pretty happy with that from our perspective. Just looking at the other fixtures, though, that hopefully will be pulled up on the screen in front of me and Ben Barnes, who we mentioned a lot with Jack Hill. Their take on Oxford Harlequins, a little bit of a baptism of fire for the newly promoted side, that one. Canterbury take on Colchester. Obviously, Ben giving us some great insight into what to expect from Colchester, given this is the highest level of rugby they've played at in their 100-year history. So they'll be looking to get off to a good start away at Canterbury. Guernsey take on Worthing. Havant Sevenoaks. We've mentioned Old Albanian Henley. Ben has mentioned one of the fixtures that certainly jumped out at the page and me when we got sent the fixtures for the new season was Tunbridge Julians versus Dorking. I mean, myself and Ben there and mentioned these two sides could be towards the top come the end of April. So that is a really tasty game to get things kicked off with at the Slade. And then it's Westcombe Park versus Bury St Edmunds as well. So that's all your National 2 East fixtures and all the little details you need to know going into the season. And last but not least, Ben, let's have a look at National 2 West. You mentioned it before, there was kind of shades, parallels, similarities to what happened in terms of the National 2 North title race last year. That standard that was set by Luctonians and Dings throughout the whole of the season was incredible, but it was Dings who picked Luctonians. They prevailed in the end, and it's looking like a super competitive what hopefully will be a title race in National 2 West this season.
Yes, no, exactly. There'll be a lot of clubs that are hoping to take advantage. Clifton will hope to be up there. Luctonians felt just short, similar to Leeds Tykes, like you said, in the north. But yeah, difficult to look past the two relegated sides. Taunton Titans have obviously made some real signings, and obviously Cinderford coming down as well. They've got good pedigree. They want to bounce straight back up as well. So difficult to call that one. I think the two relegated sides will probably be the favourites. But yeah, you can't really write off Luctonians after how well they performed last season, and then Clifton tend to be there or thereabouts. Certainly with a very good player coach in Luke Cosens.
Yeah, and just we'll probably have a little bit more of a chat around the two relegated teams in it shortly, Ben, in terms of Taunton and Cinderford. But I know you spoke to Ryan Watkins for the rugby paper last weekend. Looks are a team that have been certainly building in the right direction kind of in the last two seasons, especially back-to-back highest finishes for them. I think they were fourth in 22-23, second last season. So what are Ryan's thoughts about going again? Because I know last season he was very much like, we want to keep building in the right direction. We're not going to nail our colours to the mast and say we're going to win the title, we're going to go for the lead. But given how close they did get last year, what were his thoughts going into the new campaign?
Yeah, I mean they like to keep, like you said, they like to keep their cards close to their chest. They don't think that promotion or going up is the be all and end all. They like to progress as a club. If they want to improve, which is what they said, they want to improve on last year. Well, there's only one position higher than second, and that would be going up and into the third tier. So yeah, they like to promote within. They've got a lot of homegrown players. And they really, and I think one of their players recently got picked up by a Premiership club. So that shows, sorry, by Northampton Saints. So picked up by the Premiership champions. So that shows, the pedigree of what Luctonians are all about. It's great. Speaking to Ryan, he said it's great for the league that the likes of Ollie Devoto are being signing, but they prefer to home grow their players and then build them up and then send them the other way. So build them up at an early age at Luctonians and then send them on to the top flight.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on with what you're saying there, Ben. I think it was Archie Benson. I hope I've got his name right, but I'm pretty sure he was Archie, who was in the back row last year for Luctonians. He was certainly in our sort of team, the media team of the season for National League Rugby, but they've got some great talent there. Ben Link's been named captain this week. He's a prolific try scorer in the league, fantastic in the front row as well. Charlie Grimes as well was flying up and down that wing at Mortimer Park last season. So they've got an interesting model, as you say, Ben, Luctonians, and I'll be hoping to improve again this season. You've also mentioned Clifton in the pack, but you've obviously touched on Taunton and Cinderford there, and obviously Taunton signing of Ollie Devoto was definitely possibly one of, if not the biggest star name to come into National League Rugby. And now Ollie obviously will be pulling on the boots at Veritas Park, but he has got an all-encompassing role. You know, be working with the marketing team. He'll be working in the community as well. But as Ryan kind of said there to you, Ben, what an unbelievable addition to the league, and it just only adds to the profile of National League Rugby, doesn't it?
You're absolutely spot on. I mean, when you see the signing straight away, you can't believe your eyes. It's an unbelievable signing. An England international, an ex-Chiefs player who has won European Cups, Premierships, an incredibly decorated player. Always gives 100%. Brilliant, just a brilliant centre overall, and so much knowledge, and bringing that into Taunton is incredible. Not just for Taunton Titans, but when other teams come up against Taunton, I'm sure the players will be picking trying to get some advice off Devoto, because it's just an incredible signing. And like you said, great exposure for the league as well. It will create added interest from the top flight, and people from Exeter as well will certainly be keeping an eye on him. But reading statements and things, and seeing Ollie's comments and from the coaching staff, he's not just going to walk into the side. He's got competition in for places. There's some very, very good players at Taunton that will be quite excited about the challenge of competing for a place with an England international. It doesn't really get much better than that, does it?
No, not at all, Ben. And you're quite right to say. I know a lot of the Taunton players will be looking to pick the brains of Ollie. I know Harry Wright, who's part of the Taunton playing group, was at Exeter Chiefs when Ollie was there, and he's looking forward to working with him again. And I'm sure the whole squad is looking forward to working with Ollie, given the experience that he's had in all those big games and trophies that he lifted with Exeter Chiefs during that golden period under Rob Baxter. So fantastic addition to National League Rugby. We're looking forward to see how he goes this year. We'll be looking forward to see how Cinderford go as well. They'll be picking the brains of Jake Pelledri, who's joined the coaching staff. I know a big name who's now part of a National League Rugby club. Taunton back in this level for the first time since 2020. Cinderford, 6 years they had in National One. So as you said, Ben, at the start, they'll be looking for an immediate return back to the third tier if that presents itself to them. So really interesting to see how it all unfolds at the top. It'd be rude of me probably not to mention All Red Cliffians as well. They seem to surge at the table towards the end of last season. A brilliant home record was definitely the platform behind Dan Cox's side rise up the division. So they'll be very much in there. So we've probably named about 5 or 6 teams there who might be in the mix, Ben. So really looking forward to seeing how that all unfolds at the top. In terms of the newly promoted sides, though, 2 coming into the league, Ben, Devonport Services and Macclesfield. I believe yet again you spoke to the 2 camps during the summer. Ben Russell, I think it's at Devonport Services, as well as Matt Coleridge as well at Macclesfield.
Yes, exactly. Devonport Services, very close link with the Navy players that have played in the Babcock Trophy at Twickenham, or should I say, IAM Stadium these days. But they aren't paying anyone, which means that they are up against it, looking to survive. Clubs aren't usually open about their finances and things like that, but they're very much saying no. We're still not paying anyone at the club, which is quite surprising, certainly at this level. But they'll probably use that as fuel for inspiration. Yeah, a lot of good players from the Navy that will come across, and hopefully they'll go well. With Macclesfield, yeah, I used to work, like I was telling you off there. I used to work for them as team journalist. The last time they were in the National Leagues in 2018, 2019. Lot of travelling next season, of course, being put in the West. But Matt Coleridge, I know, has spoken to Chester last year that went through that to get advice on staying overnight and regular stops and things. Yeah, it's an interesting route for Matt Coleridge. He used to be the performance analyst, and was my boss actually in that season. So I'll be kind to him on here. He's really into statistics, really into data as you'd expect. Very, very thorough. Works incredibly hard. Works long hours. And is leading a ambitious club. Former National One, they didn't want to be in at level 5. They don't really want to be at level 4. They want to be back in the third tier. So they'll be looking ahead. It will be a project. It'll be, yeah, like I said, difficult in the West. They've got Tom Morton, who's an excellent fly half. He's backs coach this year. So we're providing a lot of wisdom, and it'd be very interesting to see how they go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see how Macclesfield go, as you quite rightly say, Ben, the first time they're back in level 4 since 2019, involved in another brilliant title race in Regional 1 Northwest with Rosendale last year. And yeah, it's got a very good coaching staff behind there. I know Ollie Longmore as well, who we spoke to for the National League Rugby's Rugby World article at the start of the summer. You know, he was saying this club needs to be back in National League Rugby. It's where they belong. And as you said, Ben, they were a national club, a National 1 club once upon a time. So very interesting to see how Matt embraced the challenge of National 2 West going into the new season. So let's just have a look then, Ben, finally at the fixtures on the opening day of the season in National 2 West. I mentioned kind of all Redcliffians before. They're taking on Cinderford at Scotland Lane, you know, 10 straight wins at Scotland Lane for all Redcliffians at the back end of last season. That's the one that kind of stands out for me going into Saturday afternoon. What about you? Where's the rugby paper? Where's Ben Jaycock looking at the weekend?
Yeah, I think that's a great shout on all Redcliffians. But yeah, we've gone for Exeter University against Clifton. Like I mentioned, Clifton want to be up there competing after being in the mix for a few years now with player coach Luke Cosens at the helm. They've lost sorry, Exeter have lost their talismanic fly half Jack Part, but have a great deal of talent in the university. Sort of mixing with the Bucks Super Rugby side as well as the Saturday team, and they were excellent under head coach Gareth Elliott last year. That'll be a tight game. I feel Exeter like to throw the ball around, and they were very strong at home. Clifton exactly the same, and we're going there hoping for a win to start their title pursuit. But I think Exeter will be very tricky customers. I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, you make a great point on Exeter there, Ben, given, you know, the balance that Gareth Elliott has to have, the head coach, between Bucks Super Rugby and National League Rugby. You know, last year they nearly, obviously they were pipped by Loughborough in the final, if I'm right in saying, a Bucks Super Rugby. But in terms of the National Leagues, they had a really strong season as well. So I think it's a brilliant game to focus on. They seem to be juggling both responsibilities, both duties incredibly well. And they'll all be hoping to do the same this year as well. Just in terms of other games this weekend, Bourneville, who another team who like to throw the ball around, some fantastic tries they scored last year, especially at home at Avery Fields. They're taking on newly promoted Devonport Services, who Ben gave us a lovely insight into just earlier. Camborne versus Macclesfield. So Macclesfield's first trip of the season up against Camborne, who I think after last season were wanting to build on a sixth place finish. I know they were decimated by injuries in the second half of the season. They had Paul Guston actually come into pre-season training with them, doing a little bit of coaching. So they'll be hoping to take his expertise into this National 2 West campaign. Hinckley take on Luctonians. We mentioned Luctonians before. Going to Hinckley won't be easy. We know Chris Campbell's side are ambitious as well. So another interesting game in National 2 West. Hornets taking on Redruth. Loughborough students, they're the first team to welcome Taunton in National 2 West. So an interesting prospect for them. And as we mentioned at the top, Old Redcliffians taking on Cinderford. Cinderford looking to bounce back at the first attempt after relegation last year. So I think, Ben, that probably mopped up all the talking points as we previewed the new National League Rugby season. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us on the first ever edition of the National League Rugby preview show. Obviously, please do check out Talking Rugby Union as well as National League Rugby's website for all the latest around level 3 and 4. But of course, you can also grab your copy of the rugby paper either in print or online when it gets released the weekend, Ben. So how do people do that, and how do people follow you on social media?
Yes, you can find the rugby paper, subscribe to the rugby paper on the rugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to find everything from the paper that comes out on the Sunday. You can find, like you mentioned, the print or digital edition, and you can find the rugby paper on X at the rugby paper, or myself at Ben Jaycock _.
Brilliant. I keep forgetting it's called X now. We can't keep saying let's go to Twitter.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I remember that actually.
but yeah, obviously do find those handles of Ben and the rugby paper. We'll put them in the description of the video as well. And in terms of the video, as I said right at the top, please start to like these preview shows if you do like them, that is. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Share with whoever you want, because it all helps boost the profile of National League Rugby and helps with algorithms, which I don't understand. But it also just hopefully puts us in the spotlight a little bit more, because certainly for the first 2 weekends in September, National 1 and National 2 is the highest level of domestic rugby you can watch in England. So if you are at a bit of a loose end, please do search for your local National League Rugby club. And if you feel like it, head down for a Saturday of what is going to be some more fantastic rugby. The first whistle in September to the last whistle in April, it's going to be pretty full on. And I know me and Ben will be very, very busy over the course of the next 8 months on National League Rugby. But Ben, thanks again for joining us on the National League Rugby preview show. And let's look forward to another great season.